community, for our Burwood community groups, are supporting ADRA over the next few weeks in helping them in this Say No to Violence. They're going to be an afternoon program here, and there will be some topics that probably won't be good for little ears. We've got some domestic violence people, a lady and a gentleman, you don't hear that very often, that had to leave their abusive marriages. And so we'll be hearing from them. We'll be also hearing from Beck Orient, who's on the front line of ADRA and who is dealing with this on sometimes a weekly basis and monthly basis. And also you'll be hearing from another lady who is also a survivor, but she now works in the area, and we'll be sharing statistics and things. Our wonderful Sylvia Mendez from the Australian Union, who heads up this initiative here in Australia, will also be here speaking to us. Now, as part of this initiative of the church, it's actually run by the children's and women's departments and family ministry departments and ADRA of the church here in Victoria. So what they're needing is, and I spoke to you about it last week, is the go bags. They're very important, and we're encouraging people to, in your Sabbath school groups or your groups that you meet with, to put a couple of bags together. Now, last week I told you that with ADRA, we get about 60 people throughout the year that require these bags. That's people that are coming into us. However, ADRA support Women's Housing Australia. Now, we are supporting over 250 ladies a year through this. Now, also, we've just signed on with another charity to help as well, and it's going to be about another 250 bags. Now, I know, being a Burwood member for a long time, when we actually did it a number of years ago for Blue Jeans Day, we got 60 just to help the refuge, just not far. It's in this suburb. And then the following year we made 100, and that went to help women in Victoria. So we encourage you to make the bags. If you want more information, we're going to be collecting them here that day, so you can bring them and leave them. We'll have a place in the foyer for you to put them, and encourage you to come to our End It Now rally day and support and stand up against violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's time to pray. And with our focus today on small groups, we're going to pray together in small groups. So I'd encourage you to stand, to move away from your friendship or family groups, and to get into groups of 4 or 5, like these people are about to do. We have a lot to pray about, including the future of our community through small groups, the people who'll be putting these End It Now bags together, and crucially, the people who'll receive them. Our neighbour directly across the road was one of those people. So these sorts of events are very unexpected, and the need is real when it occurs. So please, church, make a stand, pray together. We'll join back together as a community in a few minutes.
also wait till everyone's watching us pray.
It's a beautiful sound to hear people praying. You're at work or uni or at school, or you're catching up with people at an evening and they say, "What are you doing on the weekend?" And what's your response? What do you say? My guess is if you're here, you probably say, "I go to church." And that's it's true. We do go to church. We do come to this place. But maybe this is my little hobby horse, I'm not sure. But I do struggle with the phrase, "I'm going to church." Because the Bible also describes church as a family. And do you say, if you're catching up with your family, do you say, "Oh, I'm going to family"? We're having a catch-up for my grandma's birthday. I'm going to family this weekend. I'm going to family tomorrow night. It doesn't quite sound right. It's easy to treat church like a place or an event, but the Bible does call it family. Family is something that you belong to, whether you're born into it, whether you marry into it, whether you're adopted into it. Family is something that you are part of. Family is something you contribute to. You are a part of your family. You play an important role in your family. You bring things to your family. And family is beautiful, but family can be difficult. Anyone agree? No, your families are perfect. Awesome. Family can be challenging too. It can be, sometimes there are times of frustration, of messiness, of it not always being easy or pleasant. But it's family. It's family. These are the people that they are your blood. These are people that you belong to, that you're a part of, you contribute to. And so you are always there with family. And so it's no wonder the Bible describes church as family. It's this group of people that gather together. I read a book quite a few years ago now that really shifted my view on this substantially. There's a book by a guy, you might have heard of him, Fraser Catton. It's called Letters to the Church. And in that book, he tells a story of a man who he was spending time with, and this guy was in a gang, but he met Jesus and he joined his family. He joined the church. He got baptized, but then a year later, he kind of disappeared and dropped off the radar. And one of the leaders noticed that, and so they sought him out, they found him, and they asked him what happened. And he said, "I had the wrong idea about what I thought church would be. I thought it would be like family, a different kind of family. See, when I was in the gangs, we hung together, we watched each other's backs, we took care of each other, we committed to each other 24/7, not just once or twice a week. When I got here, it was like each one was on his own. There was just no reason for me to be here with these people." His perspective, gang did community better than the church. And perhaps that has something to do with why we have the statistics around engagement in faith community that we do in Australia. Have a guess. What do you think? How many what percentage of people engage regularly in a faith community? What would you say? 30? 10? You are here today in the minority. 16%. This was in 2023. I saw some research recently that suggested actually down to 10% now. 10% of people who regularly engage in faith community, 84% or 90% do not. That's a big number. That means in your university, in your school, in your workplace, in the club that you're a part of, if you are there, you're one of the 10%. The other 9 people you spend time with haven't experienced faith community, or if they have, they've chosen not to be a part of it anymore. Chose not to be a part of it anymore. So what if church was like family? Would that stat change? Would the people who represent that stat experience the change of being part of family? Would we change? Would church become a place of authentic, real-life community in a world where we have carefully curated personas and digital friends? Would it be a place where you can come and find people that support you through all the never-ending list of tasks and commitments and to-dos and things that you have happening during your life? Would it be a place where, instead of seeing it as a flawed institution, people saw it as something and a people that you have a role in protecting, in building, in growing, in supporting? So why do we gather? Why does this matter? Why is what you're doing today significant? And I want to explore this through the book of Hebrews. If you have your Bibles with you, I want to encourage you to open up to Hebrews chapter 10, page 1039 if you have a blue Bible. Hebrews chapter 10, and we're going to be reading from verse 19. Hebrews 10, verse 19. Page 1039 if you have a blue one. If you have a device, much easier to find. Hebrews 10, verse 19. And we're going to be looking at 2 realities that this presents to us, but then 3 responses we have to those realities. If it weren't for those realities, these responses wouldn't exist, would have no reason to exist, would have no reason to engage in them. But it's those 2 things that come before that give us a reason to do those 3 things afterwards. So Hebrews 10 verse 19 says this: Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened up for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God. Now we're going to pause there, because these are our 2 realities. These are the 2 truths that the writer packs in before he says what happens because of these 2 truths. It says, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place. Now let me give you a quick, if this is language that sounds a bit odd, let me give you a quick recap here of what he's talking about. In the Old Testament, they had this place called the sanctuary, the tabernacle. And yes, you're probably stuck on the badger skins. I was too. It's pretty cool. They had this tabernacle, and it was created as a place where God wanted to dwell with his people. He wanted to be there with them. And so this tells you kind of what it looked like and some of the things in this part of it. There was also more of an outer court as well. But you can see you'd go through, and then there's the holy place. Then there has Holy of Holies, or the most holy place. And there's this veil that separates those 2 spaces. And in the Holy of Holies was some furniture that was really significant. And that was the place where Jesus, the presence of Jesus, the presence of God was. And so back then, during this time in the Old Testament, you couldn't just enter in there whenever you liked. You couldn't just go and hang out with God in the most holy place. If you did, well, it wouldn't be good for you. The only person who could, do you remember who? High priest. How often? Once a year. The high priest could go into this place once a year, and to do that, he had to run through this series of processes and things that he had to complete before it was okay for him to go into that place. Because in that place was the presence of God, and God is perfect, and us humans as people who are imperfect, when we go into the presence of God with those imperfections, with that sin, it just can't exist in God's presence. And so the priest had to go through this ritual in order to be allowed to enter into God's presence. It wasn't something that they had confidence in. Not anyone could just go in. Only one person, only once a year. There are Jewish, I don't know if you've heard, there's this belief that they would tie a rope to the ankle of the high priest at this time, so that when he went in, if anything happened and he didn't follow the rules properly, and he died, they could pull him out. That's not in the Bible. So we think this came from around the 4th or 5th century AD from some Jewish rabbis who, it seems like they wanted to emphasize how important the most holy place was, and that you couldn't just go in whenever you like. There were some serious implications of how you had to encounter God, because we are sinful and God is not. But that's not what Hebrews now says. Hebrews says we have confidence to go in because when Jesus died, in Matthew it tells us, remember what happens? That curtain between the holy place and the most holy place was torn. Now this is not just any curtain. It was about 9 meters high. And it says it was torn from top to bottom. It was split, and because of that, it wasn't going to be repaired. It didn't need to be put back together, because access to God was once and finally opened for every person to experience. And so that's why the writer of Hebrews says we can draw near to God, the most holy place where he is, not fearfully, not afraid, not worried, not trying to think we have to get everything right, but actually we can go our authentic selves, all that we are, all that we have, the messed up that we have, we can go with confidence into a relationship with God. And that is good news. That is really good news, because that's what Jesus came to bring in. Jesus, this great priest over the house of God, who allowed, facilitated, enabled us to be now in this relationship with God without fear, without worry. We can go into his presence only because of Jesus. It's kind of, maybe this is a simple illustration, but it's kind of like you go to the zoo. Kids, if you go to the zoo, who likes going to the zoo? It is super fun. They've now got lots of elephants, I think, at Werribee in the open plains area, so it's like full savannah experience. It's like going to the zoo, but as you're going through, you meet a zookeeper and you start chatting and they say, hey, do you want me to show you behind the scenes? You're like, yeah, I'm super keen. And so the zookeeper takes you behind the scenes and you get to go and you get to pet the elephants and you get to feed the giraffes and you get to be up close and personal with all these animals, only because you met the zookeeper. The zookeeper was your pass into this amazing experience. Jesus is the one who has enabled us to have this relationship with God. Those are two realities. We can be with God because of Jesus. So based on that, What does this little passage say? How do we respond to that now that we know this good news, now that we know we can be with God because of Jesus? Let's keep reading. Hebrews 10, verse 22. It says, because of those two things, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. We don't have to pretend. We don't have to put on a mask. We can draw near to God with a sincere heart, with absolutely being who we are. He's quite okay with that. The school our kids go to, there's recently been a new head of secondary come in. And we had parent-teacher interviews recently, last week. And we went, and the principal was there, and I was talking to them and having a chat, whereas the kids were kind of like, is that okay? Are we allowed to do this? They're like the principal. It's like scary. See, I know the principal. So we were catching up, we were having a chat. The kids didn't. They just saw this guy as one who has all this authority and makes decisions and gets you in trouble. But for me, it was completely different because I knew who he was. And so our approach to this person was so different. I could easily come close and have a chat with him because I knew him. And because of Jesus, because we have a great priest, because of what he's done, we can draw near to God. We can get close. And for some people that seems really odd or strange or scary. I think not just for non-Christians who might have a view of either God is disinterested or God is out to get you. I think as followers of Jesus, we can sometimes have a view of God that is a little bit distorted as well. I heard someone explain how to tell the way that you see God. And they said, what do you do when you mess up? When you make a mistake, when you do stuff you shouldn't be doing, when you say what you want to say but you know you shouldn't be saying, what's your response to God? Do you run away, afraid of what he's going to do? Or do you run towards him and say, hey, Dad, I'm really sorry. I messed up. What's your response to God in that moment? Because Hebrews says we can draw near to God. It says we can come close to him. That's okay. That's invited. That's welcomed. Regardless of what you've done, we can still come to him because he's the one who cleanses us, who washes us, who restores us, who renews us. The word here for draw near, it's a word that's actually used a few other times in the New Testament. And one of them is, there's this lady, you probably know the story. She's had this chronic bleeding happening for 12 years. By all accounts, she is unclean. She is someone that people don't want to hang around. But she sees Jesus. And the word here is prosokomai. And when she sees Jesus, with all of her issues, with all of her struggles, with all of her burdens, she prosokomais. She draws near to Jesus. And Jesus feels this power go out of him as she touches just the edge of his robe, and she gets healed straight away. That's what it looks like to draw near. That's what it looks like to draw near to a God who wants to bring healing. So this is church. Church is people who are invited, no matter what, to come and draw near to God because of Jesus. Response 2. Let's keep reading. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. That word unswervingly, it's a word called, it's acline. Now you've heard of incline? That's where you change your trajectory a little bit. Acline is there's no change. It doesn't differ, it doesn't move, it doesn't vary, it just stays straight. And he's saying, hold without deviating to that hope that you have, the hope that we profess because he's faithful. I love this portrayal of hope. This is a painting by a guy called George Frederick Watts. In the late 1885, one of his relatives, his daughter had just lost her infant baby to illness. And Watts wrote to one of his friends, and he says, I see nothing but uncertainty, contention, conflict, beliefs unsettled, and nothing established in place of them. And it was in response to this traumatic experience that he makes this painting. And he describes this painting as hope sitting on a globe with bandaged eyes, playing on a harp, all the strings broken but one. From that one poor little tinkle, she's trying to get all the music possible, listening with all her might to that little sound. That's hope. One little string, one tiny sound, but it's in that sound that in this painting, this person can't see, can only hear, but that one little sound is enough to give hope. What we see, what we experience, what we struggle with, what we can't get used to, will not always be. That's the hope we have. That better is coming, that full restoration is coming, that full healing is coming, that full renewal is coming, because Jesus is faithful. And if he said, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back, I'm going to make all things new, then that's what he means. And we can put our hope in that, because that's the hope that we profess. It's the hope that keeps us going. It's the hope that restores us. It's the hope that when everything seems like it's just falling apart and it's no good and you don't want to do it and you're not sure where to go, that's the hope that Hebrews is talking about. So church is drawing near, but it's also gathering to remind each other of the hope that we have. Of the hope that we have because Jesus is faithful. Response 3. We're to draw near to God, we're to hold on to hope. Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward. Before we get to what he says, what do you think of when you hear the word spur? Does anyone go to like Westerns? Yep, the guys and the horses, things on the back of their shoes. I don't know if you've ever been spurred. Not comfortable, not pleasant. To have one of those things dug into your side, I think it'd get me moving too. But the word for spur used there is actually irritation. Now you're like, yeah, okay, now we're talking church, right? Irritation, exasperation, disagreement. That's the word and what it means. But what the writer's saying, it makes more sense when we look at what we're to be spurred on towards too. Spurred on towards love and good deeds. Love, agape, spurred on to that kind of love that Jesus showed for us. And good deeds, doing good things for each other and for other people. And sometimes you need spurring on to do that. If you're at the gym and you have someone who is saying, hey, come on, yeah, you can do it. One more rep. You can do this. You can do one more lift. Or you're running and they're saying, no, let's just get to that next tree. You can do it. that helps. It helps you just push that next little bit towards what you want to achieve. And we're told, let's consider how we can spur one another on to love, to good deeds, to not giving up meeting together. Christianity is, I've said this before, it's a decision you make by yourself, but it's not something you do by yourself. It's an individual decision that is lived out in community. And in that community, you are encouraged to discover and love deeper, to do good things, to keep meeting together. That's why we do Burwood groups. That's why we gather on a Sabbath. That's why we do lunches. That's why we do these things, because the writer has told us, hey, don't give up meeting together. Don't give up spurring each other on, encouraging each other towards what is good and what is right. We must not let rugged individualism define our walk with Jesus. Because every term there is for church in the New Testament, none of them are individual. It's a vine. It's connected. It's a family. It's a temple. It's a nation. It's a gathering. It's a body. So, let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, encouraging one another. That's why we gather. That's why being here matters, because you are here to maybe spur someone else on. Or maybe you are here to encourage somebody else. Or you've come this morning because there's someone who has a word of encouragement for you in whatever you're going through, whatever you're experiencing. Church is not a place. Church is people. Church is you and me together. That's what church is. So we don't go to church. We are the church. You don't attend church. You belong to a church. And the truth is, we are far from perfect. As a church, we will not always get things right. But I hold on to this quote I want to share with you as we wrap up. Enfeebled and defective as it may appear, the church is the one object upon which God bestows, in a special sense, his supreme regard. It's the theater of his grace in which he delights to reveal his power to transform hearts. That's church. I'll invite the team up. We're going to wrap up to sing about the goodness of God. But as they do, being here, inviting people into your home, sharing a meal, gathering together in a Burwood group, all of that, yes, it's getting together, but it's so much more than just getting together. In those moments, you are being church. You are the church. When you share a meal, you are the church. When you catch up with someone for coffee, you are the church. When you give someone a word of encouragement, you're being the church. And so, I want to suggest that you being here is not an accident. You are here because God wants to use you to help this be church, to help us be church. And we all have this role to play in this theater of grace. And I think that's a pretty cool privilege. We all have an opportunity to reveal the power that transforms lives, that transformed our life, but also transforms and can transform any life that comes into contact with us as we continue to be church. We're going to sing about the goodness of God, because it's because of that we can be church. It's because of that we gather, that we are here. So I want to invite you to join us as we sing about his goodness.